You know what? I forgot some.
Well, come on, how can there be more?
Mobius, there are so many people who said I was the problem.
Okay.
Nick Fury, Eric Selvig, Boar, Laufey, Amora, Jane Foster, Darcy Lewis, Maria Hill. We're going back a few years, but they're all there. Heimdall, Fandral, Volstagg, Hogan, Heimdall.
You just said that.
Heimdall was a big one.
Okay,
He got
but
very
you can't
upset.
you can't repeat it.
It's memorable. Absorbing Man. What about Donald Blake? Did I say him? Donald Blake is who Thor pretends to be when he goes to Earth. Speaking of which, Hercules, another big guy, that was a big problem for him.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. Marvel just dropped a Loki deleted scene talking about his battles with Hercules and a whole bunch of other deep-cut characters like the Enchantress. There have been a ton of you that have been asking for them to do a real version of Amora the Enchantress in the MCU since that first Thor movie came out years ago, and turns out they actually did try to do her a couple times, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. Some of the scenes were also tied to other post-credit scenes that we saw in Marvel movies. For instance, the Hercules name drop was meant to be connected to the Thor Love and Thunder post-credit scene, setting up a larger spin-off for Hercules that they then canceled. I'll explain what that was going to be in a second. They are going to bring this god version of Loki from the end of Season 2 back during the next couple of Avengers movies, so we will see him by the end of Secret Wars, for those of you asking when Loki is going to come back. And now they have been talking about doing Loki Season 3, just because Marvel is looking for the biggest possible, safest bets that they can do, and Loki Season 1 and Season 2 did so well. The reason why they're releasing these deleted scenes now and not back when Loki Season 2 actually came out in the first place is because they're getting ready to release the Blu-rays for all this stuff. There were a couple other deleted scenes that they've already revealed from like Loki Season 1 with Frog Thor. They've already done a bigger version of Frog Thor in the MCU. There's so many deep cuts during this deleted scene though, like his battle with Absorbing Man that he mentions here goes back to the original classic Loki comics and how Absorbing Man originally got his powers. But the deleted scene would have come from the moment when he's talking to Mobius about his past battles with a ton of different teams and people in the MCU up to the events of the first Avengers movie. You remember that's when this version of Loki got pruned. He never experienced the events of Thor the Dark World, Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, or anything after that, so he watched all those things happen in the very first episode of Season 1, so at this point he does know about all the future battles of the original MCU Loki who died. In the deleted scene, apparently the conversation just lasted for way longer, with him talking about a bunch of his previous battles that he had messing with people as part of the mischief he used to cause on the regular. But he starts by mentioning Nick Fury. That's from the events of the first Avengers movie. He never directly interacted with Nick Fury before those events that Nick Fury knows of. Like Loki probably messed with Nick Fury, the people of Earth, many times before he actually appeared to him. Eric Selvig from both the first Thor movie and the first Avengers movie, but it wasn't really until the first Avengers movie that Eric Selvig actually met Loki in person, but he knew that Loki was behind the events of the first Thor movie. Bor's actually meant to be one of the super big deep cuts. Bor is Odin's father inside the MCU. We saw him in the flashbacks during Thor the Dark World. So what he's saying is that Bor was still around when Loki was adopted by Odin and was just yelling at him on the regular because Loki was causing mischief as a child too. This actually changes some pre-existing canon that I believed. So in the first Thor movie, when they show the flashbacks of him adopting Loki, like finding Loki on Jotunheim, it seemed like Bor had already died by that point, and Odin had become king of Asgard because his father had died. But because Loki is saying that he met Bor, and Bor didn't like him or thought that he was a big problem child, it means that he didn't die at that point. There are actually a couple other members of Loki and Thor's family that they tried to do a couple times over the years and didn't. The other big one is Balder the Brave. During the Season 2 episodes, Loki and Mobius go to the alternate timeline version of Earth to get Victor Timely Kang. When they go to the 1893 World's Fair, one of the exhibits is for Asgardian mythology because the people of Earth still know about Odin and Thor, but in this timeline, they don't know about Loki or they don't care about Loki. They mostly use this for comedy to piss Loki off, like how dare they forget about me, I'm way more important than Balder the Brave, nobody knows about that guy, nobody cares about him, which is a bit of a meta reference because they were going to do him during the first Thor movie back in 2011. But at the time, because this was early Marvel Phase 1, Marvel was terrified of how these movies would do with the general audience, like casual audiences, and Kevin Feige felt like introducing a third brother to the mix would have overcomplicated the Loki and Thor story, just overshadowing a lot of stuff. They tried to do him again when they got to Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. He was going to be played by Daniel Craig of all people, like super big cameo scene, like, oh my god, it's Daniel Craig. This is what he would have looked like. They'd signed the contract with him. He was getting ready to film the scenes. But because they filmed the movie during the pandemic, Daniel Craig apparently was really afraid of the pandemic and didn't want to travel, was fear of catching it. So at the very last minute, they wound up contracting with John Krasinski to do his Reed Richards Fantastic Four cameo scene, replacing his Baldur the Brave scene. Just because they did film that during the pandemic, there were a bunch of cameos that they tried to do, but then changed at the last minute because they weren't able to get actors because travel was so hard during that period. For instance, one of the other cameos they were going to do was a version of Doctor Doom, but the reason why they didn't do that was a little bit different because they wanted to save the character for something bigger later on. It was actually long before they'd fired Jonathan Majors and wanted to bring Robert Downey Jr. back as his version of Doctor Doom for Avengers 5 and Avengers 6. When he mentions Laufey here, that's his father on Jotunheim, the king of the frost giants. He basically told Loki eventually that he didn't care about him and left him to die that night because he was born small, and that's one of the moments that caused Loki to care even more about Odin. And as bad a father as Odin is, they just wanted to show you how Odin was so much better a father than Laufey was. We actually did see what happens to Loki if Laufey never abandoned him to die and he stayed on Jotunheim to eventually rule over the Frost Giants as their king during What If Season 1. But the Frost Giant version of Loki looks way bigger. My assumption is that in this timeline, like from this universe that he came from, he just grew larger because he stayed on Jotunheim. When he mentions fighting Amora the Enchantress, this is another super deep cut. People have been asking about her in the MCU since that first Thor movie. She's another character they kept almost using in the Thor movies, but then changed their minds at the last minute. When they got to Loki Season 1 and created the Sylvie character, she didn't exist in the comics before Loki Season 1, but now they started to actually write her into the comics, Harley Quinn style, where they appear on TV before they appear in the comics. When they did that, they said that her character is meant to be a combination of Lady Loki in the comics and Amora the Enchantress because of the way Sylvie's powers work, kind of enchanting people. When they did that and they revealed the inspirations for the character, I assumed it meant that they would never actually do a real version of Amora the Enchantress in the MCU, but because Loki is mentioning her here, it means that Amora still exists inside the MCU. Closest we've actually gotten to seeing her on screen is during Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1. Some of you will remember this. Way back during Season 1, they did a version of Lorelei, who is Amora's sister, meaning at that time that she did exist in the MCU. Like, there is a version of Amora out there somewhere. Maybe we'll see her in a future magic-based story. She'd also work well during something like Agatha or Wiccan or the Scarlet Witch stuff that they're doing in the future. So there's a couple different places they could use her. When he mentions Jane Foster and Darcy, those are both from the events of the first Thor movie, because remember, this Loki did not experience Thor the Dark World when the original Loki faced Jane Foster and Darcy again. The Maria Hill name drop is also a reference back to that first Avengers movie, and there's the joke about him mentioning Heimdall twice. This is both because he messed with Heimdall on many occasions over the thousands of years that he was living in Asgard. Really good example of this was the D.B. Cooper scene during Season 1. The flashbacks explained that Loki is D.B. Cooper inside the MCU, but they would have hijacked the Bifrost to do that, so Heimdall would have been pissed about that. He also froze Heimdall during the first Thor movie, so probably not happy about that either. I also think the reason he mentions Heimdall twice during this scene is because Tom Hiddleston was actually ad-libbing and just naming off a whole bunch of names super quickly off the top of his head and just accidentally said his name twice. They mentioned Fandral, Volstagg, Hogun. Those are the Warriors 3. They killed them off during Thor Ragnarok. The Absorbing Man fight is another super big deep cut because he originally was named Crusher Creel, who was a boxer. He's canon to Daredevil. He actually fought Matt Murdock's father in the boxing ring. But Loki poisoned him in the classic comics with an elixir who gives him the powers to absorb properties of anything he touches, which is when he becomes a villain, Absorbing Man. So part of the joke here is that he's just saying that Absorbing Man got super pissed off about that, like, look at what you did to my body now. And obviously the biggest name drop here is his battles with Hercules in the MCU. So remember, these would have gone down before the events of the first Thor movie, because we know about Loki's timeline between the first Thor movie and the first Avengers movie. He was with Thanos that entire time. So these are probably a bunch of ancient battles that he's talking about with Hercules. The reason why he's mentioning him during the scene, though, is because originally they were going to use this to connect with the Thor Love and Thunder post-credit scene where Zeus sends Hercules to kill Thor in revenge. That whole Thor plot with the War of the Gods and Hercules was originally meant to be very different. Remember, they actually filmed Thor Love and Thunder before they did Loki Season 2, so like all the Hercules stuff was planned out before Loki Season 2 started, why he's mentioning him here now. Part of the idea is that Hercules post-credit scene was originally meant to set up a Hercules spin-off TV show for Disney+. This was back during the era of Marvel, like early Disney Plus era, when everybody and their sister was getting a Disney Plus show. Like if you ever showed up in the comics once in the background, you would get a Disney Plus show. So the post-credit scene wasn't meant to directly set up Thor 5 or anything like that. It was sort of a test run for a story that would continue in another spin-off Disney Plus series, because they did this, like I said, when they were doing a ton of Disney Plus series. This is why you heard about 1,000 different Marvel TV series the last couple years that never saw the light of day. I did videos about some of them. There were a couple unannounced ones too that we still don't know about, but there was like a long list of shows they were going to make, then canceled at the last minute when they changed all their plans for the movies and the shows behind the scenes. This is why there were so many Marvel Phase 4 post-credit scenes that now will go nowhere and never be paid off, like the Kit Harington Black Knight post-credit scene. We did hear that they are developing Thor 5 now. Chris Hemsworth wants to end his Thor character on a really, really good note, so he's not going to quit Thor until they do a really, really good Thor movie. So it is possible they could pay off that Hercules and War of the Gods storyline during that, but here's the thing, they also want to speed run through the rest of the multiverse arc and finish that as fast as possible. Like the Deadpool joke during Deadpool and Wolverine, can we just be done with the multiverse saga? So what Marvel has done is basically delayed all the non-multiverse movies till after Secret Wars, which is why you hear about a bunch of stuff getting delayed the last couple of years, because they just want to be done with Secret Wars as fast as possible. So all those plans for Thor 5 could change in the next couple of years, because it will be at least 4 years, maybe 5 years before we actually see the movie. So be prepared for them to never pay off the Hercules post-credit scene, just like that Black Knight post-credit scene. Just part of the graveyard of Marvel post-credit scenes that go nowhere. But there's a bunch of big stuff coming up. I just did a What If Season 3 trailer. Those episodes are coming at the end of December. That'll be like the next big Marvel series. There's a bunch of X-Men, Eternals, Celestial stuff happening during that. They're even doing a Voltron version of the Avengers, so be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss any of that stuff. Everybody click here for my brand new Fantastic Four trailer video, and click here for that Deadpool 4 video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.